What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my unit review and builds guide for the Desert Banner featuring Khadein Ursula, Male Byleth and Nino. So let us take a look at the 4-star focus unit of this banner, and I definitely think that he is the best 4-star focus that we have got, even better than Summer Claude in my opinion. So Khadein Male Byleth is a blue infantry mage this time with Guide's Hourglass as his preferred weapon. So this gives him -1 special cooldown, and he can get 2 status effects at the start of the turn. So he can get the unhindered movement status effect, which allows him to pass through the tree tiles without any movement penalty, and then he also gets the dodge status, which can give him the speed based damage reduction all the way up to 40%. And then in the combat, he's able to get +5 to all of his stats and also the tempo effect. So this is really good for spamming specials. And then finally, he can also provide the spectrum drive effect to all of his allies within 2 spaces. So not only Byleth is going to be a really fantastic unit himself in the combat, but can also provide the extra stats to his allies. So he is a bit of a hybrid unit in that aspect, with being offensive and also providing some support to his allies. We can actually compare this Khadein Byleth with the legendary version of Byleth, and you'll see that he's basically like a side grade. They are very identical when it comes to their stat spread, and in fact I would say that the tempo effect built into Khadein Byleth's weapon is a lot more valuable than the null follow-up in legendary Byleth's weapon, because getting null follow-up is a lot easier with slot B skill, with Sacred Seal, or by like outsourcing it to infantry null follow-up, infantry speed tactic and stuff like that. But it's not really all that easy to get the tempo effect or even the tempo slot B skill. So I really like the tempo effect on Khadein Male Byleth's weapon honestly, and both of them do have Sublime Heaven, which does scale off based off their attack and can also do more damage to dragons and beast units, and does pierce through the damage reduction skills, which is really amazing. So this all makes Byleth into a really fantastic 4-star focus unit, because he has got base 42 attack and base 44 speed, having super boon in both of them, and he can function with a Sublime Heaven really well. And Khadein Male Byleth also has dodge, which is really helpful for taking the damage, and he doesn't really have to rely on wind sweep or water sweep like the legendary version of Byleth, who does not really get any kind of dodge. But on the other hand, he does get the drive null follow-up, which can be helpful to his allies, and it is built into his weapon. Khadein Male Byleth is also going to be having more mobility than the legendary counterpart, because he is not really going to be having any kind of penalty on tree tiles, so he can just easily move through those tree tiles as if he's a flying unit, which is really amazing. And then he does have speed resistance finish and loud speed resistance in his base kit. The finish skill is available at 4 stars, so he could be used to fodder off Ascended TK for her tier 4 skill, and that is going to be his like main use as a fodder pretty much. But still, the attack speed finish is a lot better as a finish skill, and then he also provides loud speed resistance, which is already present in the divine code section. As of making this video, I do consider him the best 4-star focus unit that we have got so far, because he is just really amazing with that Sublime Heaven and his weapon, which has got the tempo effect built into it, and it is like a full tempo effect, not even like half. And the fact that he is going to be a 4-star focus unit means that it is going to be easy to plus and merge him. And the reason why I say that he's going to be better than Summer Claude is because he has more competitive use than Summer Claude in game modes like Summoner Duels, in Aether Raids defense, and just overall because of being able to pierce through the damage reduction. So even the 4-star focus unit of this banner is really good, and if you want to build him up on a budget, then you can just give him null follow-up as the Sacred Seal, because he does not really have null follow-up like the legendary version. So you can easily run this in a Sacred Seal and run a drive slot skill so that it can stack up with the spectrum drive built into his weapon, and you can actually run him as his budget support unit by running double drive skills, and that is definitely a way of utilizing him for something like limited hero battles or for arena assault. But if you want to invest a bit more into him, then Divine Codes is going to be having all the fodder that you need. So you can easily get attack speed ideal 4 from there, and also the null follow-up. And the ideal 4 skill actually has really good synergy with his weapon, because it does count the bonus as the status effects. So he already gives himself the dodge status and the unhindered movement status, which is going to be immediately activating the ideal skill. So that is fantastic. And you can also run Time Pulse so that you can pre-charge Sublime Heaven and actually trigger it twice in a single round of combat in the player phase, and it's just going to be a lot easier for him to trigger that special twice because he has got the tempo effect in his weapon, so the guard effects are not really going to be stopping him, and he can just run null follow-up in his slot B and have a form sacred seal so that he can have more offenses, because Sublime Heaven does depend on his attack stat at the end of the day for doing damage. So that's why attack speed ideal is going to be better if you cannot really afford attack speed finish. But if you can get attack speed finish, then that is basically the best option. And you can also run Time Pulse 4 on him from Desert Nino, and that is going to be helping you tremendously because it is going to be able to provide you with that mini special spiral effect, which just allows you to always have the special charged up, and that is going to be amazing when you use him with dancers, and you can just nuke multiple enemies in a single turn with a Sublime Heaven. As for his IVs, I do think that plus speed IV is going to be the best IV that he can try and get, and if you want to ascend his assets, then basically going with the plus attack IV, which is a super boon, is going to be good. Speaking of Desert Nino, you can also give him speed preempt when you're going to be inheriting Time Pulse 4 if you do give him the tier 3 version of Time Pulse from someone else, and this is going to be a pretty fun build that he can also run because it is always going to be having Sublime Heaven charged, so he can actually vantage with speed preempt and trigger a special that can pierce through the damage reduction and is actually going to be doing a lot of damage with the true damage from finish kill and his attack stat. So I definitely like this kind of build. It is not the most ideal build for him, but still it is a pretty fun build with speed preempt, and he's one of the better users of this because of having this kind of special that is not stopped by damage reduction whatsoever. If you summon on this banner a lot and also get Desert Linde, then you can also give him Remote Sparrow, which is going to be giving you damage reduction in your player phase, and that is going to be stacking up with his dodge, so he can basically have more damage reduction in the player phase, and that is going to be pretty solid for not taking much damage from enemies counter attack. Competitively speaking, he can be used in summoner duels as well, and I really like using guard on him because he does have the full tempo effect. So if the players that you face have some kind of Sacred Cowl unit who can retaliate back to you, then they're not going to be able to charge up Sacred Cowl on his second hit, which is going to be triggering Sublime Heaven. And tempo effect with guard is actually really solid because the enemy is simply not going to be able to charge up their special, which is really good. And tempo effect also just ignores the Warbreaker of Duo Thor, who's also a very popular unit. So something like this could be run, but if you're going to be running him with Bridal Catria or like Winter Cordelia and he can just do the brave hits, then there's no need of running guard skill. You can just stack up some more offenses, and as it says, he's going to be triggering Sublime Heaven on his second hit. It is pretty important to trigger your special on the second hit because the enemies are going to be having pre-charged Hardy Fighter specials like Sacred Cowl and Aegis, so there's no point of running Time Pulse to just do the special on their pre-charged defensive special. So that's why triggering it on your second hit is always good, because even if they run Deflect Magic, you're going to be able to pierce through that damage reduction. So that is a pretty important thing for summoner duels. And you can also just run Joint Drive Attack on him because he does give the Spectrum Drive from his weapon, and he can also be used in Arena with Seal Resistance 4 so that he can nuke really hard. And as someone who uses like Khadein Male Byleth a lot in Arena, he's pretty much going to be deleting stuff with his Sublime Heaven, so that is going to be a lot of fun. And you can just run Null Follow-Up Sacred Seal for some of the matchups because he is lacking that. And then finally, he could also be using Aether Raids defense with a Bridal Catria team, so he's going to be able to quad attack very easily. And I do like Unity skills on Aether Raids defense because people usually run like Temari Dagger Air or have some kind of like Sabotage Attack or Speed, so that is really helpful to not get hindered down by those debuffs. So attack speed Unity does work out. And again, the same concept does go into Aether Raids defense like Summoner Duels, where you want to trigger your Sublime Heaven on your second hit, not on your first hit. So not running Time Pulse is actually pretty good, and he could be running with the Catria Ball team because he is going to be providing the extra stats, which is really good, and Medius is going to be protecting you from any kind of Bolt Tower damage. And Joint Drive Attack with his Drive Spectrum is really good for providing extra attack to a team that relies on the brave hits. Desert Ursula is a top tier green Mage Cavalier because of Crow's Crystal, her preferred weapon. So this weapon gives her -1 special cooldown, and if she's at or above 25% HP, she can get 3 status effects at start of the turn. The first one, of course, is going to be the unhindered movement, which allows her to bypass the trench tiles and be an amazing mage nuke. Then she also gets desperation, which frees up her slot B skill so that she can run different skills, and this is going to be a full HP desperation, so that is really good. And then she gets dominance. So dominance, just as a recap, does give you true damage based on the debuffs that is present on the foe. We have seen this before on Genealogy Hilda, who's a free-to-play unit, and also with Brattle Micaiah. So this is going to be really good for damage output. And then in the combat, she's able to get +6 attack and speed, and also the half null follow-up, which allows her to bypass the follow-up negation effects. So overall, Ursula is going to be functioning as an amazing mage nuke because of not really caring about any kind of trench tile, making good use out of desperation and half null follow-up both. And that is going to be allowing her to just double easily against many of these slower threats, and also dominance effect, which is going to be giving her more damage output. Now, it's worth noting that a lot of tanks do have debuff neutralization weapons like Brave Hector or Ascended Idun, and many of the tanks do also run debuff neutralization skills like Slick Fighter, for example. So against them, dominance is not really going to be giving you the true damage. So there, it will be falling off a bit, but still her overall kit is going to be functioning really well with her 42 base attack and 46 base speed. So she's extremely offensive and also has a super boon in attack. Her base kit does include Chill Speed Resistance 3, which is going to be having good synergy with the dominance effect that she has got, and this is going to be helping her double more foes and also do more damage with dominance. She also has Panic Smoke 4, so this is going to be giving you the Plagian effect as well as giving it to the allies in the cardinal direction. So this is again doubling down on the debuffs and making full use out of the dominance so that you can do the true damage. You pair her up with allies which can do a lot of debuffs on the opponent, like Aversa, like Yune, for example, and you're going to be getting really good results. So it is not really hard to do that in those game modes, for example, and she's going to be able to take care of many of the meta threats which are blue. So the green color definitely gives her that kind of advantage. Like for example, against Brave Dimitri, she's going to be doing a pretty fantastic job with the dominance, getting that true damage, and just being able to have this kind of desperation at full HP. If you want to build her up on a budget, then you can just give her life and death actually, because she already has the desperation and her bulk is not really all that great. So this is a nice budget skill which you can give, and you can just have her with Reef Position and Moonbow, and you should be doing fine. So she can trigger Moonbow on her double attack, which is going to be really nice, and Blade Session is going to be just doubling down on her player phase. If you want to invest a bit more into her, then you can definitely give her Sparrow 3 from the Divine Codes, and Glimmer is going to be, nicer than Moonbow in my opinion, especially when you're going to be reducing the resistance of the opponent and when you can get the true damage with dominance. So I definitely like Glimmer a bit more on mages and especially on Ursula. But if you really want to go all the way with the investment, then you can run Attack Speed Catch Force so that you can have the most amount of offenses that you can try and get with this kind of range unit, and also have Speed Resistance Fortrays. So the freeing up her slot B skill with the desperation effect from her weapon is really helpful in running the Fortray skill as a retreat option, and you can just run Attack Resistance Menace as a slot C skill, or just run allies which can debuffs. So she's not going to be very self-sufficient with all of the debuffs that she can get, so definitely try and run all of the allies that you can get to get the panic, to get the debuffs on the opponent. And Attack Resistance Menace is going to be a part of her kit where she can debuff the opponent herself and pretty much get the dominance effect against them while also retreating. She could be used in Aether Raids defense, like I said. She is going to be having amazing synergy with the debuffs that Yune can cause, and Yune is really a menace after her remix and refine. So I think running Ursula on a cav line with Embla, Note, and Yune is going to be the optimal, way to use her in Aether Raids defense in the Dark Season, which I think we're definitely going to be seeing her quite a bit. And you can just run Loud Speed Resistance so that you can ignore the resistance buff of the opponents and pretty much run that. And then Panic Smoke 4 is kind of flexible. You can also run Goat Cavalry or some other skills if you want to. And she's pretty much going to be a really solid unit with Yune. Now, both of them are going to be green mages, but both of them are really strong green mages. So that can help you against many of the threats which are going to be blue. You can also use her in Summoner Duels, and she could be run there with Pulse Smoke Pulse Smoke is of course pretty nice in Summoner Duels so that you can pulse down the Hardy Fighter armors and the pre-charged special of the units. And you can also run Ruptured Sky so that you can do more damage to, just units like Duo Duma, for example, or just the Dragon and Beast units that are used as far-safe tanks. And then finally, if you do merge her up all the way to +10, then she is going to be a really scary unit to face in Arena with G-Dual Cavalry 4. And she can definitely spook you because she's going to be ignoring the trenches and actually is going to be a pretty big annoyance. So it is actually a good thing that she doesn't really score all that high, so that we don't really have to face her that much. So she can score 185 BST with a build like this. Desert Nino is going to be a red infantry mage this time with Child's Compass as her preferred weapon. And she's going to be a pretty solid nuke because she has got 41 base attack and she's the fastest unit in the game right now with base 46 speed. So her weapon does give her -1 special cooldown, and she does get 2 status effects if she's at or above 25% HP. So of course she gets the unhindered movement like the theme of this banner is. So she's not going to be getting any kind of movement penalty on the tree tiles. And then she also gets +1 movement increase just like Yuri. Now, this could be a double-edged sword because if you're facing a stall opponent like Duo Thor, for example, or Reeve, then your movement is going to be completely taken care of because stall status is going to be removing your movement and you're going to be just having one single movement. But the good thing is that Nino is, not that slow of a unit. So usually the stall effects are going to be targeted towards the slowest enemies, and Nino can try and avoid that if you just place her correctly. So for the game modes like Summoner Duels, for example, or for Aether Raids offense or defense, definitely try and position her in a way that she does not fall victim to the stalled status. And she can also get the in-combat effects with this weapon. So again, the HP threshold is going to be active for this, and she can get +5 to all of her stats. And then she can get extra attack and speed depending on the visible status effects that she has got ×4. So this can go all the way up to 16. And she already has 2 status effects in her weapon itself. So she can already get like extra 8 attack and speed from this effect itself, and it's pretty easy to give the extra status effects if you run her with like Brattle Katria, or if you run her with Na with infantry null follow-up. So it's pretty easy to get the max 16 attack and speed out of this. And finally, if her special triggers, which is not an AoE special, then it reduces damage from the foe's next attack by 50%. So this is only going to be happening once per combat, and she can basically try and emulate the strategy and the playstyle of Brave Female Byleth, where she is going to be triggering the special and then getting the damage reduction out of it, essentially. And then she's going to be trying to use Speed Preempt and trying to vantage the ranged opponents. So she does have Attack Speed Finish 4 and Speed Preempt in her base kit. So the Finish 4 skill is really good because she's going to be spamming specials. And Time Pulse 4 is going to be a new tier 4 skill, which I've made an entire video on if you want to go over the best users of it. So you can check that out in the description. And Time Pulse 4 is basically going to be giving you the mini special spiral effect. So Glimmer is always going to be pre-charged, and she's going to be able to trigger that with Speed Preempt and do a lot of damage and essentially vantage most of the units because she is very, very fast. Now, she is going to be having some very visible shortcomings like Brave Female Byleth, for example. So she is going to be getting walled by far-safe tanks with Hardy Bearing Aegis and Deflect Magic Sacred Seal. But unlike Brave Female Byleth, she does have access to Special Spiral 4 because of being an infantry unit, so she can pierce through the damage reduction using that. Unlike Brave Female Byleth, she doesn't really have the null follow-up in her weapon, so you definitely have to provide her the external null follow-up or run the null follow-up slot B skill, or even run that as a Sacred Seal. But it's not really all that hard to outsource null follow-up nowadays with infantry null follow-up, with Desert Linde, and then infantry speed tactic. So all of these skills are available, which can just give you null follow-up, and she can pretty much function with the playstyle of Brave Female Byleth, but having much better player face because of having this +1 movement and actually being a 3 movement infantry unit who doesn't really care about any kind of tree tile. Nino already comes with a pretty optimal base kit with Speed Preempt, and you have to outsource null follow-up like I said, and you can just run Attack Speed Solo Sacred Seal on her and you should be doing fine. But if you want to change things up and maybe run her in Aether Raids defense, then you can definitely do that and run her with a Brattle Katria team. And the reason being is that she can then quad attack and basically get the other 2 status effects from Bridal Katria and max out on her effect and get the whole 16 attack and speed. So it's pretty easy to do that with Bridal Katria, and she's a great teammate. And in the Dark Season, Bridal Katria teams are pretty easy to put together with Medius and then Yune providing you the debuffs. And Nino is going to be a different color mage than Yune, so that is pretty nice. But make sure to have her on the back line because she is going to be having that 3 movement. So if she moves too far away, then she's going to be outside of the finish range of her slot A skill. So that's not the best thing. So definitely try and keep her in the back line so that she can not really go ahead of your team, but still add to the power of your team by being able to quad attack and be a very powerful mage. And Time Pulse with Glimmer is going to be pretty nice for the pre-charge special, but you can also run, Draconic Aura or Luna. Speaking of Draconic Aura, that's definitely the special I would recommend if you use her in Summoner Duels, because like I explained in Byleth's section, it's pretty, imperative that you trigger your special not when the enemy has got Hardy Fighter Aegis or Hardy Fighter Sacred Cowl up. You trigger your special on the part where they do not have their defensive special. So you can easily try and do that on the second attack, and Water Sweep is going to be pretty good because most of the distant counter far safe tanks are going to be dragons who run the distant counter dragon sacred seal, so you can just provide the external null follow up to her pretty easily with like infantry speed tactic Katria or with Desert Linde, and she is going to be able to function really well with a 3 movement essentially, and just water sweep the dragon opponents and trigger Draconic Aura on her second hit. So Draconic Aura can definitely work out, but Luna is also going to be an option that you can try and run. Khadein Nino also has access to Special Spiral 4, so you can run that with Luna and then have Speed Smoke 4 so that you can just get the damage reduction even when you're not going to be triggering your special, because here we do not really have Speed Preempt, so you're not going to be going first in the enemy phase, and Speed Smoke 4 can work out for a mixed phase build like this, and something like this is going to be working out at higher investment and higher merges, so she can get the damage reduction and also stack that up with her weapon and pretty much pierce through the damage reduction by using Special Spiral 4. And then finally, if you use her in Arena, then you can just use her with a 300 SP slot based skill so that she can score like a 185 BST unit. And Null Follow-Up Sacred Seal is going to be pretty nice if you're not able to outsource the Null Follow-Up to her in Arena. Make sure to share this video with your friends if they're trying to build up any of these units. I went in detail with all of these units, and if you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like and a comment, helps me a lot. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as trenches are against Ursula. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.